check this out.
We need some more clarification, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know you're going to ask a really nice question.
Well, duh.
Well, it's an important question, I think. Are you worried that other leaders in the world are going to start to doubt that America is back if some of these big things that you say on the world stage keep getting walked back?
Nice. What's getting walked back?
It made it sound like, just in the last couple days, it sounded like you told U.S. troops they were going to Ukraine. It sounded like you said it was possible the U.S. would use a chemical weapon, and it sounded like you were calling for regime change in Russia, and we know...
None of the three occurred.
None of the three occurred?
None of the three.
Mr. President?
You interpret the language that way. I was talking to the troops. We're talking about helping train the troops that are the Ukrainian troops that are in Poland. That's what the context. I sat there with those guys for a couple hours. That's what we talked about.
Yeah, right.
So when you said you're going to see when you're there, you were not intending to
I was referring to meeting with and talking with the Ukrainian troops who are in Poland.
And when you said a chemical weapon use by Russia would trigger a response in kind.
It will trigger a significant response.
What does that mean?
I'm not going to tell you. Why would I tell you? You got to be silly.
What?
The world wants to know?
The world wants to know a lot of things. I'm not telling them what the response would be. Then Russia knows the response.
Mr. President.
All right, I'm going to take two more questions. 1, 2.
Mr. President, thank you. I still want to get back to your original words that he cannot remain in power. Can you help us understand, you have more foreign policy experience than any president who has ever held this office. Whether those are your personal feelings or your feelings as president, do you understand why people would believe you, as someone commanding one of the largest nuclear arsenals in the world, saying someone cannot remain in power is a statement of U.S. policy? And also, are you concerned about propaganda use of those remarks by the Russians?
No and no.
Tell me why. You have so much experience. You are the leader of this country.
Because it's ridiculous. Nobody believes we're going to take down. I was talking about taking down Putin. Nobody believes that.
Yeah, right.
Number one. Number two, what have I been talking about since this all began? The only war that's worse than one intended is one that's unintended. The last thing I want to do is engage in a land war or a nuclear war with Russia. That's not part of it. I was expressing my outrage at the behavior of this man. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And it's more an aspiration than anything. He shouldn't be in power. There's no, I mean, people like this shouldn't be ruling countries, but they do. The fact they do, but doesn't mean I can't express my outrage about it. Last question.
President, thank you. You've said that you're confident that your comment won't undermine diplomatic efforts. But just to be clear, are you confident that Vladimir Putin sees it that way, that he will not use this as an escalatory...
I don't care what he thinks. Look, here's the deal. He's going to do what he's going to do. Putin, look...
But you're not concerned that he may see your language and view that as a sign of a reason for escalation, use that as an excuse to escalate? Given his recent behavior?
Given his recent behavior, you should, excuse me, I shouldn't say that to you. Given his recent behavior, people should understand that he is going to do what he thinks he should do, period. He's not affected by anybody else, including, unfortunately, apparently his own advisors.
What?
This is a guy who goes to the beat of his own drummer. And the idea that he is going to do something outrageous because I called him for what he was and what he's doing, I think is just not rational.
You didn't say when you meet him again. Would you meet President Putin ever again?
It depends. No, it's not a question. The question is there something to meet on that would justify him being able to end this war and be able to rebuild Ukraine?
So there is a
That's the issue.
Can you just say yes or no, Mr. President, whether or not you would be willing to meet with President Putin?
It depends on what he wants to talk about.
Thank you. Okay, last question.
What if he wanted to talk about negotiations? Now, what if he wanted to...
You said Supreme Court. Now, don't play that.
Well, you can't leave that hanging. Just real quick, two matters on the Supreme Court. While you were away, there were reports about the wife of Justice Thomas and texts that she had with former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Should Justice Thomas recuse himself from any cases involving the January 6th insurrection or former President Trump at this point?
I'd leave that to two entities.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Ask the second question.
No, two entities. Go ahead. Sorry.
One, the January 6th committee, and two, the Justice Department. That's their judgment, not mine to make.
So on Justice Thomas recusing, you don't think he should, or?
I said that. I told you those things get into legal issues. That in fact, I told you I would not tell the Justice Department what position to take or not take, and I'm not going to instruct the Congress either.
Why?
And did you get any chance to watch much of the Judiciary Committee
I
hearings
didn't get a
last
chance
week?
to see any of it, unfortunately.
The fact that Republicans were questioning Judge Jackson on matters like former sentences related to child pornography cases or the definition of a woman. Does that, as the former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, make sense to you?
Look, this is one of the most qualified nominees ever nominated for the Supreme Court in every respect, in terms of her disposition, her intellectual capacity, her experience and background, and serving on three additional courts. A woman who is totally, thoroughly qualified, and will be a great addition to the court in my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Hey, let me take the one question from the most interesting guy that I know in the press. That's you.
Mr. President, there had not been a U.S. service member killed in combat in Afghanistan since February of 2020. You set a deadline, you pulled troops out, you sent troops back in, and now 12 Marines are dead. You said the buck stops with you. Do you bear any responsibility for the way that things have unfolded in the last 2 weeks?
And here we go.
I bear responsibility for fundamentally all that's happened of late. But here's the deal. You know, I wish you'd one day say these things. You know as well as I do that the former president made a deal with the Taliban that he would get all American forces out of Afghanistan by May 1. In return, the commitment was made, and that was a year before. In return, he was given a commitment that the Taliban would continue to attack others, but would not attack any American forces.
What?
Remember that? I'm being serious. No, I'm asking you a question. Because before... No, wait a minute. I'm asking you a question. Is that accurate, the best of your knowledge? What?
I don't think it's the issue that, do you think that people have an issue with pulling out of Afghanistan or just the way that things have happened?
I think they have an issue that people are likely to get hurt.
Well, duh.
Some, as we've seen, have gotten killed.